He won't make it. That was the first whisper circulating through the palace corridors, a murmur so shocking that those who heard it barely believed it. But in the hushed tones of aides, doctors, and senior staff, there was no doubt. Prince William's condition was serious, critical, life-threatening. And what makes it even more alarming is not just the severity of the illness, but the timing. Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, have returned to the United Kingdom overnight, unannounced, their sudden presence raising questions that no one in the media, or even within the palace walls, can answer. What could possibly have prompted such a drastic move? What is really happening behind the gilded doors of Buckingham Palace? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The story we are about to unravel is not just about a prince's health. It is about a family under pressure, a monarchy facing unprecedented scrutiny, and secrets that the public was never meant to see. Imagine a world where tradition collides violently with human vulnerability, where private pain is broadcast to millions across the globe, and where even the smallest whisper can ignite a media storm. This is not hypothetical. This is happening now. The first reports trickled out from sources described as close to the palace, carefully avoiding naming names. A brief mention in a tabloid, a cryptic social media post, and suddenly the speculation was unstoppable. Was William suffering from a sudden heart attack, a relapse of a chronic illness, or something far more serious, something that has terrified even those closest to him? For the public, this is shocking. For the royal family, it is a test of endurance, loyalty, and secrecy. It's impossible to overstate how extraordinary this situation is. Over the decades, the British monarchy has faced scandals, illnesses, divorces, and even deaths. But rarely has the world seen such a volatile combination. A direct heir to the throne in critical condition, a brother who has publicly clashed with the family returning unexpectedly, and a media landscape primed to dissect every detail, every look, every whispered statement. Each action, each word, could escalate the situation into an international spectacle. But let's step back for a moment. Why should you care about this story, right now, at this precise moment in history? Beyond the glimmering crowns, the stately palaces, and the traditions that seem distant to the modern observer, the implications are enormous. The monarchy is not just a family. It is an institution, a symbol, and a political entity that has influence reaching far beyond England. A crisis of this magnitude could ripple across governments, media networks, and public perception in ways that are both immediate and long-lasting. And if you think this is mere rumor, consider this. The palace has tightened security, private jets are rerouted, and aides have been told to expect emergencies. These are not the actions of people dealing with something minor. Now, imagine the emotional landscape inside the palace. Prince William, the eldest son, known for his poise, his sense of duty, and his stoic composure, is suddenly vulnerable. The man who has spent decades preparing to ascend the throne is now fighting for his health in ways that are intensely private, yet utterly public at the same time. How does one reconcile the image of strength that the world has projected onto him with the fragility of his human body? And more importantly, how does this affect those around him? His brother Harry, Meghan, their parents, and the extended royal family. And that brings us to the next shocking element: Harry and Meghan's overnight flight to the UK. While the world speculated about potential vacations or diplomatic appearances, insiders reveal it was a flight charged with urgency, secrecy, and perhaps even fear. Why did they come back at this exact moment? Was it solely concern for William's condition, or is there something deeper, more complex at play? What conversations took place midair, and what did the Sussexes encounter upon landing? Every question leads to more questions, forming a web of intrigue, suspicion, and raw emotion. But before we dive into the swirling storm of palace politics, medical assessments, and family tension, let's pause to consider the public's role. In an era dominated by social media, instant news cycles, and 24-hour reporting, there is no longer such a thing as privacy. Every detail, every potential leak, and every speculation becomes amplified 1,000 times over. The palace is aware of this, and yet even their most cautious measures cannot fully contain the narrative once it is out. For millions of viewers around the world, this story is a real-time drama unfolding before our eyes. where the stakes are literally life and death, and where every decision has consequences beyond imagination. Now, let's take a closer look at William himself. Born into a life of scrutiny, expected to carry forward centuries of tradition, he has been trained from birth to endure pressure, embody responsibility, and perform public duty with unwavering composure. But the human body has limits, no matter how stoic the mind may be. And now, in a rare moment where history and humanity collide, those limits have been tested. For the first time, the public and the family alike are confronted with the terrifying reality that even the future king is mortal. This story also exposes the complex web of family dynamics. William and Harry's relationship has been under intense scrutiny for years, oscillating between camaraderie, rivalry, and estrangement. Add Meghan into the equation. A woman both adored and vilified by media and public alike, and suddenly you have a narrative filled with tension, emotional spikes, and potential conflict. Their sudden reunion in the UK isn't just about concern. It's about confronting long-standing issues, navigating loyalty, and making decisions that could reshape their lives forever. So, what does all this mean for the monarchy? For the people who watch the palace with awe, loyalty, or even criticism, it means that we are witnessing a rare moment of vulnerability, drama, and perhaps even transformation. This isn't a story that will fade in a day. It is a saga unfolding in real time, with twists and turns that are impossible to predict. And for viewers like you, it's a story that demands attention, curiosity, and emotional engagement because the stakes are nothing less than the future of one of the world's most famous families. But as much as we think we know, the most shocking revelations have yet to come. What exactly did Harry and Meghan witness upon landing? How critical is William's health truly? And what does this mean for the immediate succession? Who is keeping secrets? And who is telling the truth? These questions will drive us deeper into a narrative filled with emotion, betrayal, and drama, stories that have never been told before in such detail. And so, as we prepare to delve into the main chapters of this exposé, remember this. The world outside is watching, but the story inside is far more complicated, far more human, and far more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Tonight, we will uncover what the media hasn't dared to report, what insiders have whispered quietly, and what the family may have hoped would remain private forever. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It started with a simple text, one that seemed almost innocuous at first glance. But for those who received it within the palace walls, it was the spark that ignited panic. He's in critical condition. 3 words that shattered the calm veneer of royal routine. Prince William, heir to the throne, the public's steadfast symbol of duty and resilience, was suddenly not invincible. Could the man we've watched for decades, groomed for leadership, truly be in mortal danger? And more importantly, why now? The first whispers suggested a severe health event, possibly cardiac. Others hinted at complications from a condition long known only to inner circles. But palace aides were tight-lipped, their statements carefully crafted, their expressions betraying nothing. And yet, the tension was palpable. Security tightened, private rooms were locked, and even the closest friends were left wondering what was unfolding behind the closed doors. Imagine the scene inside. William, normally composed and meticulous, surrounded by a flurry of doctors, nurses, and aides, grappling not only with a body that might be failing him, but with the crushing weight of expectations. Every movement, every breath, monitored, analyzed, recorded. The man who had been a model of stability suddenly became a subject of speculation, a figure whose vulnerability was no longer theoretical. It was real, immediate, and terrifying. For decades, the royal family has maintained a careful balance between public image and private reality. Health scares are often whispered about in corridors, sometimes even exaggerated, but rarely confirmed. Yet this was different. Multiple sources reported that William had been showing signs of extreme fatigue, dizziness, and intermittent pain in recent weeks, signs that were at first dismissed as stress or exhaustion. But now, with the sudden escalation, those symptoms took on a more sinister meaning. How could someone so seemingly robust be brought to the brink without warning? Even the doctors were on edge. Royal physicians, trained to anticipate every contingency, were suddenly facing a situation with no clear precedent. The protocols are strict, the procedures defined, yet the urgency in this case forced them to act outside their usual parameters. Hospitals were alerted, ambulances were on standby, and contingency plans for every possible scenario were quietly reviewed. The staff, while professional, could not hide their anxiety. One insider described the atmosphere as like a storm cloud hanging over the palace, heavy, oppressive, and charged with electricity. Meanwhile, inside William's private chambers, the scene was both intimate and chaotic. Nurses moved swiftly, checking vitals, administering medication, whispering updates to doctors who nodded gravely. William himself remained conscious, though clearly weakened. He exchanged few words, but the ones he did say carried weight. "Am I going to be okay?" he reportedly asked, a question rarely voiced aloud in royal circles. It is a rare moment of human vulnerability, stripped of pomp and protocol, that cuts through the mythology of monarchy. How does one maintain composure when every heartbeat feels like a countdown? Outside the palace, the media sensed the undercurrent of crisis. Rumors, conjecture, and leaks began to swirl. Headlines appeared almost instantly. Prince William in hospital, royal health crisis, monarchy on alert. Social media amplified every piece of information, true or false, creating a cascade of speculation that made the situation even more volatile. The palace, normally controlling the narrative with precision, now found itself on the defensive. Every statement, every carefully worded press release, was scrutinized for hidden meanings. Every omission became a potential scandal. But the story is not just about medicine and media, it is also about emotion. For Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, the situation was nothing short of a nightmare. Witnessing a husband, a partner, a father, struggle while remaining in the public eye is an almost unbearable position. She moved with quiet urgency, balancing concern for William's physical state with the need to maintain appearances for staff and visitors. Her own stress, rarely acknowledged publicly, became another layer in a complex tapestry of tension. How does one manage personal anguish while the eyes of the world are watching every reaction? And yet, even within this crisis, moments of startling humanity emerge. A nurse quietly taking William's hand, a doctor whispering reassurance, a security officer glancing nervously at the doorway, knowing that every movement might be captured by someone, somewhere. The contrast between intimate human care and the relentless machinery of public scrutiny creates an emotional tension that is palpable. It is the tension that draws us in, makes us question, and compels us to want to know more. Then there is the question of timing. Why now? William has faced challenges before, but never with this combination of secrecy, media attention, and apparent medical severity. Some insiders speculate that stress, both personal and professional, may have exacerbated a pre-existing condition. Others hint at something far more acute, a sudden medical emergency that left even seasoned royal physicians scrambling. Could it have been a heart-related issue? A neurological event? Or something even more obscure, something that is only now emerging in whispers? The palace response was swift but measured. No public appearances were made, no statements were released beyond the bare minimum. Royal engagements were postponed, staff were instructed to maintain silence, and aides moved to contain both the medical crisis and the narrative surrounding it. Yet, for every measure taken to protect the family, there was a countermeasure outside, a media frenzy, a social media post, a rumor mill spinning faster than anyone could control. It is the paradox of modern monarchy. Secrecy is nearly impossible in the age of instant communication. As the hours passed, the situation grew more tense. Medical teams consulted with specialists from around the world, emergency protocols were updated, and William's condition fluctuated. Moments of calm were punctuated by sudden spikes in concern, an irregular heartbeat here, a drop in blood pressure there. Each episode, though minor in isolation, contributed to a larger narrative of uncertainty and danger. The public, hearing fragments, speculated wildly, while the family dealt with the raw reality. And then came word of Harry and Meghan's return. A private jet landing under the cover of night, the Sussexes arriving without announcement. Their motives unclear, but their urgency undeniable. Did they know the full scope of William's condition before boarding? Or was their return prompted mid-flight by new developments? The presence of the estranged brother and his wife added another layer of tension to an already charged atmosphere. Was this a reunion born of concern, a confrontation awaiting, or a combination of both? Consider this: a palace filled with urgency, secrecy, and emotional tension, now layered with the return of two individuals whose relationship with William has been complicated, strained, and publicly scrutinized for years. How does one navigate such a scenario without sparking further drama? And more importantly, what conversations might have taken place in those first hours after arrival? The answers remain largely unknown, but insiders hint that the air was electric with unspoken words. Even for the staff, the unfolding crisis created a series of moral and professional dilemmas. How much information do you disclose? How do you balance loyalty to the family with ethical obligations to truth and care? And for those in the palace who are not medical professionals, the tension is equally high. Everyone is watching, everyone is listening, everyone is preparing for the worst, even as they hope for the best. And through it all, William himself remained a figure of both fragility and resilience. Every small movement was scrutinized, every word weighed for meaning. Yet there was a sense that he was fighting not just for health, but for dignity, for family, and for the role he was born to fulfill. The human story is as compelling as the royal one. The heir to the throne, vulnerable and uncertain, yet surrounded by people determined to preserve both life and legacy. But even amidst the intense medical focus, the questions persist. What triggered this critical episode? How long has it been brewing in secret? And why is the timing so catastrophic, coinciding with the return of Harry and Meghan? Each unanswered question builds suspense, creating a tension that is almost unbearable for both the family and the public. And just when the situation seemed contained, a sudden update arrived from one of the palace insiders. A warning so stark that it rippled through the corridors and into the highest levels of staff. The next 24 hours will be decisive, the source whispered. What happens next could determine not just William's recovery, but the stability of the family itself. It is at this moment, with the combination of uncertainty, urgency, and unprecedented family convergence, that the full drama of this crisis begins to reveal itself. The stakes are high, the emotions raw, and the outcome entirely uncertain. What comes next will change everything, and no one could have predicted it. It was a flight that nobody saw coming. A private jet, taking off in the dead of night, carrying the Duke and Duchess of Sussex back to the United Kingdom without a single public announcement. No press release, no social media hint, no whispered speculation beforehand. Just a sudden, sharp move that sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace and immediately ignited global curiosity. Why now? Why the secrecy? And most importantly, what did they know that the rest of the world didn't? Some insiders say that Harry received the news just hours before boarding. The text came in while he was in Los Angeles. It's urgent. He's in critical condition. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of history, family duty, and a crisis that had the potential to reshape everything. Meghan, never one to leave her husband to face such a moment alone, reportedly insisted they leave immediately. That meant booking a private flight in record time, alerting security, and preparing to navigate an arrival that was as sensitive as it was unexpected. Think about it: crossing time zones, leaving behind homes, jobs, and commitments, and entering a world where every move is scrutinized, every word analyzed, every glance dissected. This is not just travel. This is a high-stakes mission, a journey layered with urgency, emotion, and the weight of legacy. The moment the jet touched down, the palace staff knew that nothing would be the same. There are protocols for royal arrivals, for security, and even for medical emergencies, but nothing quite prepares the staff for a scenario where an estranged member returns under such fraught circumstances. Reports suggest that the Sussexes' presence immediately shifted the atmosphere inside the palace. Tension, long simmering, became palpable. Staff whispered in corners, aides exchanged glances, and even seasoned security officers were alert to the unspoken complexities that hung in the air. And what of William? How did he react to the news that his brother had returned without warning? Sources indicate a mixture of relief, confusion, and barely concealed apprehension. The dynamic between the two brothers has always been complicated. A mixture of camaraderie, rivalry, and occasional estrangement made more visible by media coverage and public scrutiny. Now, with life and health hanging in the balance, the stakes had multiplied. Would this reunion ease tension, or would it ignite old conflicts in a moment when focus on recovery was crucial? The emotional landscape of this return cannot be overstated. For Meghan, the journey was not simply a matter of distance, but of navigating decades of family politics, public perception, and personal judgment. For Harry, it was about responsibility, duty, and the urgent desire to support a brother while managing his own feelings of estrangement and resentment. Every step through the palace corridors was fraught with silent questions. Who will speak first? Will old wounds be reopened? How much of this crisis is truly about concern, and how much is about power, influence, and perception? Even the media, which had no knowledge of the flight until the plane had already landed, scrambled to piece together the story. Rumors flew, social media exploded, and journalists speculated wildly about motives, timing, and the potential for confrontation. Every detail, what time the jet landed, who greeted them, the expressions on their faces, was dissected for hidden meaning. Yet, despite the global attention, very little was officially confirmed. The palace had gone into what insiders describe as containment mode, carefully controlling information while bracing for further developments. And then there's the matter of secrecy itself. How does a couple, who has been highly publicized, manage to execute such a return without leaks, rumors, or exposure? It required coordination with security, discreet travel arrangements, and a level of operational precision that even some senior palace staff reportedly found impressive. But it also raised suspicions. Was this purely about William's health? Or were there other factors, messages, confrontations, negotiations, that necessitated such a clandestine arrival? For those watching from the outside, it is tempting to frame this as a straightforward story of family concern. But the reality is far more complicated. Harry and Meghan's relationship with the royal family has been tumultuous, marked by public controversies, interviews that exposed deep-seated grievances, and choices that have sometimes alienated them from the institution. Their return at this moment, under the cloak of urgency, adds layers of intrigue, tension, and potential drama. How will the family navigate this intersection of health crisis and personal history? Some sources hint at the conversations that occurred mid-flight. Reports suggest that Harry and Meghan spoke in hushed tones, weighing options, preparing for emotional confrontations, and anticipating scenarios that were both highly personal and intensely public. For Meghan, the role was twofold: support for her husband and strategic navigation of the palace's complex dynamics. For Harry, it was about reconciling fear, responsibility, and decades of complicated feelings toward both his brother and the institution they represent. Upon arrival, the first interactions were subtle but charged. Small gestures, a touch on the arm, a nod, a glance exchanged, conveyed volumes. Words were few, yet every movement seemed to carry weight, a silent negotiation of emotion, expectation, and unspoken history. Staff members who witnessed these interactions reported a palpable tension, a sense that the entire trajectory of family relations could pivot based on what unfolded in those first moments. Meanwhile, security measures tightened. With the Sussexes back in the UK, the palace was not just managing a health crisis. It was managing optics, perception, and potential public scrutiny. Every corridor, every staircase, every private room became part of a carefully choreographed theater of discretion. The question for observers, however, remained: what happens when private emotion and public spectacle collide? How does a family maintain cohesion when the world is watching, judging, and speculating in real time? Then there's the media frenzy. Even before official statements were issued, reporters had begun tracing flight paths, analyzing photographs of the jet, and creating narratives about possible motives. Speculation about a confrontation between the brothers became rampant. Social media posts, some accurate and others wildly fabricated, flooded platforms with commentary ranging from concern to sensationalism. The palace, accustomed to managing public image, found itself navigating a storm that combined urgency, emotion, and unprecedented scrutiny. And yet, behind all the drama, there was a core truth. The flight, the sudden return, the hushed meetings. These were all grounded in one undeniable reality. William's health was at risk. The urgency, secrecy, and high-stakes tension were not mere theatrics. They were responses to a real, potentially life-threatening situation. Every decision, every step, every whispered conversation was anchored in the need to protect him, to stabilize the family, and to navigate a crisis that had no precedent in recent royal history. As the night unfolded, the Sussexes reportedly moved quickly to understand the scope of the crisis. Meetings with medical staff, private consultations with aides, and quiet conversations with family members dominated the hours. The intensity of the situation left little room for casual interaction, and yet the emotional weight was impossible to ignore. This was not simply a reunion. It was a high-stakes intervention, a moment where decades of tension, love, rivalry, and duty collided. And still, questions remained. What exactly had prompted Harry and Meghan to board that flight in such haste? Was it purely concern for William, or was there something else at play? An urgent family matter, a confrontation, or a revelation that had not yet surfaced? Every moment, every gesture, every whispered word became a potential clue in a story that was only just beginning to unfold. Then came the most unexpected twist. As the Sussexes entered the palace, they reportedly encountered a scene that defied their expectations. William, while physically weakened, had been attended by a team of specialists who had already stabilized him. Yet there was a tension, almost electric, that no one could ignore, a mixture of relief, fear, and unspoken emotion. What they saw challenged every assumption they had made during their journey, and what followed in the next hours would test both the bonds of family and the limits of human resilience. And in that moment, as the night pressed on and every interaction carried weight, it became clear the return of Harry and Meghan was not merely a footnote in the crisis. It was a central element, a catalyst for the emotional, medical, and relational drama that was unfolding within the palace walls. What came next would change everything, and no one, not even the palace insiders, could predict the full extent of it. The palace has always been a place of elegance, ceremony, and rigid tradition. But behind the polished floors and gilded walls lies a network of secrets, whispers, and tensions that rarely see the light of day. And in the current crisis, William's critical health condition combined with Harry and Meghan's sudden return. Those hidden dynamics were about to explode in ways that would shock even the most seasoned insiders. It began with subtle signs. Doors left slightly ajar, aides whispering in corners, eyes darting with unspoken warnings. Every member of the household staff felt the shift in atmosphere. A palpable tension hummed through the corridors. Historically, the palace has been a theater of decorum, where personal feelings are carefully masked and protocol reigns supreme. But protocol can only stretch so far when human emotions collide with life and death stakes. The relationship between William and Harry, though framed publicly as a bond of brotherhood, has long been complex. Childhood rivalries, public scrutiny, and years of media intrusion have left scars. There were moments when the two were inseparable and moments when distance grew between them, widened by public controversies and personal choices. Meghan's entry into the family added a new layer, one that some insiders describe as a catalyst for both reconciliation and tension. Her presence often served as a mirror, reflecting both the best and the worst of family dynamics. And now, with William vulnerable, these underlying tensions surfaced with intensity. Staff reported moments of awkward silence when Harry and William were in the same room. Every glance, every subtle gesture carried a history of unspoken arguments, perceived betrayals, and lingering resentment. For palace observers, it was like watching a chess game in real time. Each move calculated, each word weighed, each interaction loaded with history and consequence. Meanwhile, Meghan was navigating her own complex terrain. Publicly vilified in some quarters, idolized in others, she had long been a figure of scrutiny. Inside the palace, her presence created both tension and relief. Tension, because old rivalries and fears sometimes surfaced. Relief, because she provided support, strategy, and advocacy for Harry and, indirectly, for William's family. How does one operate in a space where every smile, every gesture, and every comment could be misinterpreted or weaponized. The answer is carefully, cautiously, and with constant calculation. But even that has limits when emotions run high. The staff, long accustomed to maintaining neutrality, found themselves walking a tightrope. They had to balance duty to the family with ethical responsibilities, emotional sensitivities, and the reality of a crisis unfolding in front of them. A single misstep, a careless comment, an accidental disclosure, could ignite a firestorm that would engulf the palace. Some aides reportedly described the night as the most intense in decades, a moment where professionalism collided with humanity, where loyalty was tested against fear and concern. Palace insiders have revealed that there were moments of near confrontation. In one corridor, William and Harry reportedly passed each other, eyes meeting with unspoken intensity. The air was charged. Every step felt like a negotiation of past grievances, current fears, and future uncertainties. Staff discreetly held their positions, aware that any intervention could either soothe or inflame the situation. It was a dance of diplomacy, emotion, and raw human reaction, played out in a space where the stakes are nothing less than family cohesion and public perception. And then there were the whispers about decisions that had been made, or avoided, for decades. The monarchy, despite its image of continuity and stability, has always been shaped by personal alliances, strategic decisions, and sometimes carefully concealed disputes. Some insiders suggested that tensions about succession, public image, and individual roles within the family had been simmering for months, now reaching a boiling point. It was not just about William's health. It was about power, influence, and the unspoken rules that govern life behind palace walls. For Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, this situation was particularly charged. She had long navigated the complex waters of family, duty, and public scrutiny with remarkable composure. Yet, even she reportedly found herself confronting moments of uncertainty. Every interaction between William and Harry, every comment or gesture from Meghan, demanded emotional agility and strategic awareness. How does one maintain balance when the world is watching, when history is weighing heavily, and when the emotional stakes are immense? At the same time, whispers of secrets long kept from public view began to surface. Staff hinted at conversations that had been avoided, documents that had been closely guarded, and moments of family history that had never been fully acknowledged. Some of these secrets related to personal decisions, others to public controversies, and some to events that shaped the very trajectory of the monarchy. The convergence of a health crisis with Harry and Meghan's return created a pressure cooker environment, bringing these hidden elements to the surface in a way that was both inevitable and unpredictable. Yet, for all the tension and potential conflict, there were moments of vulnerability and humanity. Reports describe fleeting instances of compassion, aides quietly checking on the comfort of each family member, whispered reassurances in empty hallways, small gestures of kindness that contrasted sharply with the underlying drama. These moments revealed that, despite the public persona of protocol and decorum, the palace is still, at its core, a human space where emotions run deep and connections are profoundly real. The presence of the Sussexes also reignited questions about loyalty and allegiance. Who was aligned with whom? How were long-standing alliances being tested under the pressure of crisis? Some staff reportedly observed subtle signs. Aides adjusting behavior depending on who entered a room, whispered consultations, and discreet attempts to manage conflicts before they erupted publicly. Every interaction became a potential flashpoint, and every decision carried consequences far beyond what might appear on the surface. Meanwhile, the corridors of the palace seemed almost alive with anticipation. Staff described a sense of waiting. Waiting for news, waiting for a decision, waiting for a confrontation that seemed inevitable. In moments, the tension felt almost theatrical, a drama unfolding in real time with the world as audience, yet with consequences that were deeply personal. And then, late into the night, a pivotal moment occurred. Sources indicate that a private conversation between William and Harry took place in a room shielded from staff. The details remain closely guarded, but insiders hint at a dialogue charged with emotion, history, and unspoken truths. It was a moment where decades of tension, rivalry, and loyalty collided. Some describe it as a turning point, an event that would either mend relationships or deepen divides, depending on what was said and how it was received. As the night continued, the palace settled into an uneasy rhythm. Medical teams worked tirelessly, aides managed logistics, and family members navigated a delicate web of emotion and protocol. But the sense of anticipation never fully dissipated. Every moment was weighted with significance, and every decision had the potential to ripple through the family, the monarchy, and the public consciousness. And just when it seemed that the tension had reached a plateau, another revelation surfaced, one that had been quietly building in the background. A document, a conversation, a piece of history long buried. Its emergence threatened to shift the entire narrative. Insiders whisper that this secret, if fully revealed, could redefine perceptions of loyalty, duty, and even the very nature of the monarchy itself. It is in this charged atmosphere, where health crises, family dynamics, and long-held secrets intersect, that the palace stands on the edge of transformation. What will emerge from these hours of tension? Will relationships be mended, or will cracks deepen? And as the first rays of dawn began to touch the palace walls, one thing was certain: the drama was far from over. What came next would challenge loyalties, expose truths, and leave no one untouched. And it was a turn that nobody saw coming. The moment news of Prince William's critical condition began circulating, the world reacted almost instantly. Social media erupted, news outlets scrambled, and hashtags trended globally within minutes. Prince William critical was shared, retweeted, and discussed in every corner of the internet, sparking concern, fear, and speculation. The story wasn't just news. It became a collective emotional experience, a real-time drama unfolding across timelines, feeds, and forums. And then came the shock of Harry and Meghan's overnight return, sending the frenzy into overdrive. But why does the public react so intensely to the private lives of royals? And how does this pressure ripple back into the palace itself? For decades, the British monarchy has maintained a careful balance between privacy and public expectation. Royals are symbols of tradition, continuity, and stability, yet their every move is scrutinized, judged, and often distorted. The public loves a royal, mourns a royal, and in moments like this, obsesses over every detail. Suddenly, ordinary citizens felt deeply invested in William's health, not just as a figurehead, but as a man, a father, a brother. Emotional stakes soared as the narrative blurred between public fascination and genuine concern. Social media became a war zone of speculation. Tweets ranged from supportive messages, wishing William a full recovery, to wild conjecture about the severity of his condition, often amplified by incomplete or inaccurate reporting. Some posts questioned why Harry and Meghan had returned, suggesting reconciliation, confrontation, or even manipulation. Others floated conspiracy theories, tying William's health to broader royal tensions, political motives, or long-standing family conflicts. The combination of uncertainty, emotion, and global attention created a perfect storm of public reaction. In the UK, tabloids led with sensational headlines. Crisis in the palace, royal emergency, heir in danger. These words filled the morning editions, each article carefully balancing concern and provocation to draw maximum attention. Overseas media picked up the story instantly, framing it as both a human drama and an international spectacle. In every newsroom, editors debated how much to report, what could be confirmed, and how to avoid crossing the line into exploitation while still captivating audiences. And yet, amidst the coverage, contradictions emerged. Some outlets reported that William was stable and receiving excellent care. Others hinted at more severe complications, suggesting moments of crisis within the hospital or palace residence. Official statements were deliberately vague, emphasizing privacy and care without disclosing details. This ambiguity only fueled public anxiety. People want certainty, but when certainty is withheld or manipulated, they fill the gaps with their own assumptions, rumors, and fears. Direct engagement with audiences intensified the reaction. Instagram stories, live streams, and comment sections became arenas for debate. Fans and critics alike dissected every photograph, every snippet of information. Was William visibly weakened? How did Harry and Meghan appear during their return? Was Kate's presence reassuring, or did it indicate tension? The human desire to observe, interpret, and emotionally participate in a high-stakes situation drove a level of scrutiny that transcended journalism, crossing into a form of collective performance where everyone had a role and a perspective. But public reaction wasn't just virtual, it manifested physically. Crowds gathered near Buckingham Palace, holding flowers, letters, and banners, hoping to send well wishes to William and show solidarity. Some visitors were mournful, some anxious, some curious observers of unfolding drama. Police and security had to manage not just safety, but the optics of crowds witnessing a royal crisis. For palace officials, even the smallest gathering carried both emotional weight and operational risk. Every wave of public sentiment could be a lifeline or a liability. The emotional spikes were astonishing. Messages of hope poured in from around the world, as citizens imagined themselves personally connected to William's struggle. Children, inspired by fairy tales and media portrayals of royalty, sent drawings and letters wishing him strength. Celebrities and public figures tweeted their concern, lending additional visibility and legitimacy to the unfolding crisis. It was a moment when humanity and celebrity collided, when private vulnerability became a global spectacle. Yet, the reactions were not uniform. Some segments of the public expressed skepticism, questioning the authenticity of the crisis. Was this a media ploy? A manufactured spectacle to maintain relevance? Such voices, though fewer, added tension to the narrative, creating a feedback loop where uncertainty bred further speculation and division. The palace's careful messaging, while measured, faced challenges in navigating these polarities of public perception. Meanwhile, the sudden arrival of Harry and Meghan amplified public scrutiny to a new level. Social media lit up with speculation. Did the return signal reconciliation, confrontation, or something more strategic? Memes, analysis threads, and live commentary dissected every detail. Some celebrated their loyalty, some criticized their motives, and others remained anxiously neutral, hoping for the best but fearing the worst. This instantaneous, global audience created pressure that transcended the palace walls, influencing staff, aides, and even family interactions. The public's role in shaping the crisis is both fascinating and unsettling. Royal households are acutely aware that perception often outweighs reality. Every statement, every photograph, every observed interaction contributes to a narrative that can either stabilize or destabilize the family's image. The palace cannot control every post, every rumor, or every reaction, and yet the impact of public opinion is undeniable. In essence, William's health crisis was no longer only a private matter. It had become a shared emotional event, a story co-owned by millions across the globe. And with global attention comes pressure. Sources inside the palace report that the staff were acutely aware of the audience outside. Security, medical teams, and aides operated under the assumption that even minor slips could become headlines. Every word, every glance, every movement was being scrutinized, creating an environment of tension so thick that even seasoned staff described it as electrified. The very presence of Harry and Meghan, themselves subject to intense media attention, magnified this tension exponentially. In addition, contradictory narratives emerged within the media ecosystem. Some outlets painted William's condition as stable and hopeful, others emphasized potential danger, and a few spun elaborate scenarios of palace intrigue. This interplay of fact, speculation, and rumor kept audiences hooked, creating cycles of anxiety and attention that reinforced the story's intensity. Public curiosity, it seemed, was insatiable. Every update prompted new questions. What did the Sussexes witness? How did William feel about their return? Was Kate's calm demeanor genuine, or a carefully curated performance? Emotional beats intensified further as celebrities and former royals weighed in. Statements ranged from heartfelt concern to pointed commentary, each tweet or post generating waves of response. Some supporters praised the palace's discretion, while critics accused it of opacity and manipulation. The narrative evolved continuously, with each new detail interpreted through lenses of loyalty, skepticism, and speculation. The audience's appetite for information, analysis, and drama created a unique pressure cooker environment, both inside and outside the palace. Public engagement also revealed a deeper societal fascination with vulnerability. The health of a royal heir became more than news. It became a mirror through which people could explore mortality, responsibility, and the fragility of even the most revered figures. William's humanization sparked empathy and debate, transforming abstract headlines into deeply personal stories for millions of individuals who followed every update with bated breath. And just when it seemed the media frenzy had reached a peak, a new twist emerged. Anonymous sources suggested that Harry and Meghan's return had triggered whispers of internal disagreement over the handling of William's condition. Were decisions about medical treatment influenced by family politics? Were aides caught between loyalty to William and loyalty to the Sussexes? Every rumor, verified or not, fueled the cycle of speculation, keeping the world and the palace on edge. It became clear that public reaction was not just a backdrop, it was a force shaping events in real time. Staff adjusted, doctors recalibrated their communications, and family members navigated a delicate balance between personal concern and the optics of global scrutiny. Every update had the potential to soothe or inflame, to calm fears or spark new ones. And in the middle of this swirling attention, William's condition remained the central, urgent concern, a reminder that while public perception can dominate headlines, human life remains the core reality. As the day progressed, the palace faced a dual challenge, managing a critical health situation while simultaneously managing an intense global audience. Each statement, each carefully orchestrated gesture, and every interaction had to be weighed not only for its impact on family and staff, but for how it would be interpreted by millions. The stakes were immense, the emotional tension unbearable, and the consequences of misstep potentially historic. And just when the palace believed it had stabilized both the situation and the narrative, yet another layer of public reaction emerged. Leaks from unnamed insiders hinted at a family confrontation, sparking waves of panic and intrigue online. Observers speculated endlessly. What was said? Who was in the room? Did Harry and Meghan's presence influence medical decisions? The answers remained elusive, but one thing was certain: the story was far from over. What comes next will challenge perceptions, test relationships, and expose truths that no one outside the palace has ever seen. And it will change the narrative forever. The moment news of Prince William's critical condition broke, speculation about his health began to dominate media cycles, social media threads, and public discourse. But beyond the rumors, the true stakes were medical, and for the first time, some of the world's leading health experts were called upon to analyze, hypothesize, and weigh in on a situation shrouded in secrecy. What exactly could have triggered this sudden crisis? And what does it tell us about the pressures, both public and private, that come with life in the royal spotlight? Doctors and specialists familiar with high-profile patients were quick to offer insight. Some suggested a cardiovascular event, a heart attack or arrhythmia, given reports of sudden weakness and fatigue. Others hypothesized stress-induced complications, perhaps exacerbated by decades of public scrutiny, high-pressure responsibilities, and personal strain. There were even those who considered neurological causes, noting that sudden episodes of disorientation, dizziness, or lapses in motor function could align with certain acute medical conditions. Each theory carried weight, yet no official confirmation was available, creating a tense gap between fact and speculation. For medical professionals, treating a patient like William is a unique challenge. High-profile figures present layers of complexity far beyond the physiological. Confidentiality is paramount, and care protocols are tailored to balance patient needs with the realities of public attention. Every test, every treatment decision is conducted under intense scrutiny, even when that scrutiny is internal. Sources reveal that William's medical team had to operate with absolute precision, knowing that any misstep could be magnified on a global scale. The doctors involved reportedly worked around the clock, consulting with specialists across multiple disciplines. Cardiologists, neurologists, internal medicine experts, and critical care teams were in constant communication, ensuring that every symptom, every abnormal reading, and every potential complication was addressed immediately. The palace, meanwhile, coordinated logistics to allow maximum privacy, arranging secure transport, private consultation spaces, and discreet monitoring to keep sensitive details from leaking to the public or the press. Medical experts noted that sudden critical events in otherwise healthy individuals are often multifactorial. Lifestyle, genetic predisposition, stress levels, and previously undisclosed conditions can converge to create a medical emergency. In William's case, sources suggested a combination of chronic stress and a previously stable, yet now exacerbated, health issue might have triggered the current crisis. The exact nature remained unconfirmed, fueling both media speculation and public concern. Meanwhile, analysis from cardiologists highlighted subtle clues about urgency. Rapid response times, the presence of specialized emergency equipment, and a full medical team on standby suggest that the situation was treated as potentially life-threatening from the outset. In critical care terms, this indicates a patient who required immediate stabilization and ongoing monitoring, factors that underscore the seriousness of the episode. Yet, without official disclosure, every expert opinion could only approximate, leaving the public to interpret clues and weigh probabilities. Neurological specialists added another layer to the discussion. Certain acute events, such as strokes, transient ischemic attacks, or sudden neurological disruptions, can present with subtle, fluctuating symptoms: dizziness, blurred vision, confusion, or weakness. While no definitive reports confirmed such an event in William's case, the possibility fueled concern, as the nature of neurological incidents can make outcomes highly unpredictable. The uncertainty heightened both public anxiety and professional scrutiny within the palace. Pediatric and familial considerations also played a role. William is not just a royal figure, but a father, husband, and sibling. Stress, emotional strain, and concern for family can influence both treatment decisions and patient recovery. Medical experts note that emotional well-being is often as critical as physical care in high-stakes scenarios. Sources inside the palace indicated that consultations included psychological and emotional support, emphasizing not just stabilization but resilience under extraordinary pressure. The involvement of Harry and Meghan added another dimension. While they are not medical professionals, their presence, especially in moments of acute stress, can influence patient morale and emotional stability. Experts highlight that emotional support, while not a replacement for medical treatment, can significantly affect recovery outcomes. In William's case, the arrival of family who have experienced both estrangement and reconciliation likely added a complicated but potentially crucial layer of emotional reinforcement. The medical community also weighed in on the challenges of treating high-profile patients amid intense scrutiny. Doctors familiar with royal protocols note that privacy concerns, combined with global attention, create additional cognitive and logistical pressures. Decisions cannot be made in isolation. Every action is subject to both ethical standards and public interpretation. In some cases, the stress of being observed, even indirectly, can influence both patient outcomes and medical decision-making. Confidentiality, always a cornerstone of high-level medical care, became a central tension. Sources indicate that only a select number of aides and staff were privy to real-time updates, and even among medical teams, information was compartmentalized to minimize leaks. This approach, while medically prudent, also created an air of mystery and speculation, as insiders and media outlets scrambled to interpret fragments of information. Pharmacological and intervention strategies reportedly followed best practices for acute critical care. Medications were administered for stabilization, vital signs were continuously monitored, and emergency protocols were reviewed for every possible scenario. Sources suggest that William responded positively to initial interventions, yet the fluctuating nature of his symptoms required constant vigilance. In medical terms, this is a delicate balance between active intervention and cautious observation, a scenario where even minor changes in condition can alter treatment strategy. Medical experts also highlighted the role of preventative measures. Royal physicians, aware of the intense public duties and personal stressors William faces, have long monitored his health. While specifics are not disclosed, it's likely that a combination of lifestyle management, routine examinations, and proactive interventions had been in place. Yet even the best preventative strategies cannot always avert acute crises. This underscores the unpredictable nature of human physiology, even in individuals with exceptional care. The medical dialogue extended to global audiences. Analysts on television, podcasts, and social media discussed every symptom, historical precedent, and plausible treatment scenario. Speculation ranged from the optimistic, "William is stable and receiving excellent care," to the alarmist, "This could be a life-threatening event with lasting consequences." Experts emphasized the importance of separating confirmed facts from rumor, noting that accurate information was scarce by design and that public perception often lags behind the actual medical reality. And just when the world began to process these medical insights, an unexpected development emerged. Reports suggested that William's condition had briefly stabilized, only to experience a sudden fluctuation. Sources described the incident as a moment of heightened concern, prompting renewed attention from medical teams and staff. These fluctuations, while medically explainable, created dramatic spikes in both palace anxiety and public speculation, further complicating an already tense situation. Doctors also noted the symbolic weight of William's role in this crisis. As a future monarch, every medical episode carries implications beyond the personal. Decisions about care, timing of interventions, and public disclosure must balance human need with institutional responsibility. The convergence of royal duty and human vulnerability adds layers of complexity that few non-public figures ever face. As medical teams continued their vigil, the palace simultaneously navigated a delicate intersection of family dynamics, secrecy, and public attention. The stakes were immense. Even the slightest misstep, an inadvertent leak, a misinterpreted statement, a misaligned gesture, could inflame tension both inside and outside the palace. Every decision carried weight, every update rippled globally, and every medical judgment was scrutinized by audiences and insiders alike. And yet, amidst the high-stakes pressure, a subtle truth emerged. The interplay between medical expertise, emotional support, and family presence was critical. William's condition was not just a matter of physical health. It was a confluence of physiology, psychology, and relational dynamics. Every intervention, every conversation, and every carefully managed gesture contributed to the unfolding drama. As the day turned into night, sources indicated that a new challenge loomed. Additional consultations were scheduled, and specialists hinted at deeper investigations into the root cause of the acute episode. This signaled that, while stabilization had been achieved, the full scope of William's condition had yet to be understood. The combination of critical care, family presence, and ongoing secrecy created a perfect storm, one that would continue to evolve with unpredictable twists. And just when the palace believed that medical and familial elements were under control, a confidential report leaked to a trusted insider, one suggesting that the next 24 hours would be pivotal, not just for William's recovery, but for the family's unity, the monarchy's stability, and global perception. What this report contained, and how it would influence events, remained unknown, but the implications were immense. What comes next could redefine not only William's health trajectory, but the very structure and relationships within the royal family, and no one outside those palace walls knows how it will unfold. While the palace corridors buzzed with medical urgency and the world's gaze remained fixated on Prince William, the emotional epicenter of the crisis often lay elsewhere, quietly, intensely, and almost invisibly, on the Duchess of Cambridge. Kate Middleton, always portrayed as poised, composed, and ever the embodiment of calm, was navigating an emotional storm few could imagine. She faced a situation that combined fear, responsibility, and public expectation in a way that tested every facet of her resilience. It began in the early hours, when William was first reported to be in critical condition. Staff inside the palace described Kate's immediate reaction as a mixture of concern and focus. Unlike many, she did not panic outwardly. Instead, she moved swiftly, ensuring that the medical team had everything they needed, that the household staff were aligned, and that William was as comfortable as possible. But behind this composure was a layer of raw emotion, a tension born from the awareness that her husband's life and the family's stability were in the balance. Those closest to her have described her demeanor during these hours as simultaneously strong and fragile. There were moments when she retreated to private chambers to process her fear, often alone, and moments when she was actively managing logistics, coordinating updates, and supporting staff. Each action required extraordinary emotional energy, a blend of maternal concern, spousal loyalty, and public responsibility. Few could witness it, and even fewer would ever understand the intensity of that emotional balancing act. The presence of Harry and Meghan only compounded the complexity of Kate's experience. Their sudden arrival introduced dynamics of history, tension, and unresolved conflict into a space already saturated with urgency. Kate's interactions with the Sussexes, though outwardly polite and composed, were reportedly layered with subtle negotiation. Every word and gesture carefully considered, every emotional response internally measured. How does one navigate familial tension in a crisis without letting personal feelings cloud judgment, or letting the world perceive discord where cooperation is essential? This is a question Kate faced continuously over these hours. Beyond family dynamics, Kate's own emotional well-being was under immense strain. Sources indicate that she experienced moments of fear bordering on panic. The knowledge that her husband was critically ill triggered flashes of worry about mortality, the implications for their children, and the broader consequences for the family. These feelings were compounded by the public spotlight. Every step she took, every glance,